it's a lot more stressful.
Yeah, Dan Lanning, the head coach at Oregon, who's had a history, of course, in the Pac-12, saying about Oregon and Colorado, with Colorado leaving the Pac-12, his quote, "I'm trying to remember what they won to affect this conference."
Well, if you take 50% of the equation, he's totally right. But this has nothing to do with that.
No, it doesn't.
At all. Look, if winning had to do with anything, if you had some sort of benchmark you had to clear to get in a major conference, then there'd only be 30 teams in major conferences. Because if you had to regularly do things, then there would only be like 30, 40 teams that really qualify. Because there are teams all over every major conference that are historically bad and, not bringing anything to the table. Like, I could signal out anybody in any league that's not great, and I don't think we need to pile on. But unfortunately, for Dan Lanning's comment there, and I really like Dan Lanning, that's only part of the equation.
Well, one of the things that I've seen from, of course, afar and just kind of dropping in and out from Wednesday, driving to Dallas, and that show was phenomenal along with Thursday and Friday. But one of the things that I saw was the immediate, tell me if I'm wrong, because I tried to stay out of it as much as I could, but it's hard because it has been like a 2-year cycle of all this realignment discussion from Texas and Oklahoma, then USC and UCLA. And it's almost, it seems like there was an immediate switch from those who said no one would ever leave or wanted to leave to now let's downgrade the team that left. And listen, Colorado's got warts, but they also do have, and I don't know, would this have happened if Deion was not the head coach?
I mean, I think it might have just because Brett Yormark had the goals, but I think that Deion was the cherry on top. And, and look, I don't think that, I don't know Brett Yormark. I mean, I met him one time at Big 12 Media Days this year, and I was just fascinated with his acumen. But I do wonder if that Deion is going to help our TV deal thing, and we're not going shopping together combined from George Kliavkov didn't go, oh, is he now? Are you now?
It's the prime impact or effect or whatever you call
it. It doesn't it affects, it helps the news right now because look, Deion's there, everything's exciting, that the future is brighter at Colorado than it's ever been. If you're just going to go snag Colorado, who's been Colorado and the coach is still Carl Durrell, then I almost rather get UConn.
And Rick George may have not been energized to make this happen. Think about what he's done in the last 6 to 9 months. And I'm going to steal part of this from as I'm on my way down from Love Field in Dallas to Waco yesterday evening. I listened to one of his podcasts from last week, and one of the things he's talking about, and of course, Joe Claddam, I'm talking about, is a Colorado grad. He played there. He's a quarterback there, and very much one of the high names that you like to hear his opinion on college football, whether you agree or not. But in the last 6 to 8, 9 months, Rick George, the AD, just got a football program, and again, there's that pivot of when no one was going to leave, well, we're not going to miss them or San Diego State. That's fine. People are going to have their own narratives. He just took a football program, an athletic department that was 1-11 last year, and they now get the same amount of money as everybody else in the Big 12 when they arrive next year. That might be AD of the year work, along with hiring a guy that has given them some energy, however that may turn out.
Well, look, and this one for Colorado and the Pac-12, although talking to both Jim Williams and Pat Crakes last week, I mean, it's harder to figure how they're going to get a TV deal now, especially how can you negotiate with a television partner if when you go back to the room, you go, is everybody in here? 1, 2, 3. There's only 7 people in here. Where are the other 2 guys? Are they coming? Are they coming to tell it? You're going to have to do that for a long time until you do get this deal and it's satisfactory and locked down. So I don't know how they make it work. But if you are Colorado, it's not maybe the sense that the Pac-12 won't get a TV deal done, because I think, honestly, if they just decided to stay all together and ride it out, they would have gotten one done. It's that you have as much excitement around your football program as there's been since, if you heard the highlight in the open,
right,
since Cordell Stewart threw that ball to Michael Westbrook. Since that moment, this is the most excitement that you've had about this program. And if you just leave it up to the gods to determine the TV deal, then you might squander it, because then the decision wouldn't be made for you. It'd be made around you.
Yeah.
And you'd be scrambling because...
And would you look like Will Smith in that empty room looking for furniture?
You would. You might be, because, again, Dan Lanning made the point. Colorado's done nothing in the Pac-12. They've done nothing at all to make you think like, oh, man, this isn't USC leaving, or the greatest basketball program the conference has ever seen, and one of the top 5 ever in the history, if not the top 1 or 2 in the history of round ball, that is leaving your conference in the biggest major market you could possibly imagine. No, this is a team that came in, hasn't been very good, is going back to where they came from. So yeah, on the surface, it's not that big of a deal,
right,
but but it's all about other things.
But think about it. They've gone 1-11. They hired Deion Sanders, and they're now a part of the Big 12 starting next year with how many millions more or not than they were going to get, but at least they know the number. Isn't that all of what has always been the story for the last year when it comes to the Pac-12 and George Kliavkoff? It has always been this question, whether it is we're close or getting close, and I know that's been like retread city here, but what is the question? What is the number? And if that number could have ever truly been given, if it could have even been given X, give or take 5 million, would the Pac-12 be where they are today? And Colorado at 1-11, where I now see where there's a lot of that, we're not going to miss them. Okay, that's fine. But it may not be Colorado at 1-11 that you might miss. It might be what is the shrapnel. I hate to use that word because that's military, but it might be what else is the shrapnel based on Colorado leaving and who is next, if anybody, from that conference.
Yeah. By the way, we just got an email from Matt McChesney. He has to postpone it tomorrow. Something came up at his work.
Ah, damn. Okay.
But he's postponing to tomorrow. But I didn't want to get to the break. And you go, Matt McChesney.
Well, that gives us Eric Morris, North Texas football coach, today at around 3:45. So it gives us plenty of time to get into what we have to discuss here to start this show today.
Yeah, but repeat your last question, because it.
All right.
Just so we.
My last question is, to me, if those who want to, and there are, you could see this immediately with notes and quotes and history and all that, is it Colorado leaving the conference after 1-11? It may not even be the biggest part of the story. It is what will the shrapnel be that follows Colorado leaving. If there's room for a team that's 1-11, that has history with the Big 12, and they get full shares, and there may only be 1 or 3 seats available for somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Then to me, it's not even Colorado. It's Colorado. Good for them. But who is next, if anybody? And if there's somebody else, there's 1 seat or 3 seats available, and now depends on what happens, if anything, which is what we said, if in fact Colorado ever left.
I think that the 1 seat thing is just so they create some urgency. The way described it last week was the McRib is here for a limited time. Make sure you get one, kind of a thing. Because if, the 3 schools called them in succession and said, we'll take the deal. Right. Even if there's not that Fox part of it worked out yet, I'm pretty sure that they could call Fox up and be like, hey, what do we do here?
I wanted McRib. I wanted you to use the McRib analogy. I enjoyed that one.
Yeah, because that's you don't just say, like, we're taking one and nobody else, because say Arizona calls you today, and then on Tuesday night, Oregon calls and say, hey, we heard Arizona call you. Can we get the spot over them? And they're like, well, why don't you just come with them?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying any of that's happening, but I think that part of that is strategy when it comes to it, and expanding the Big 12 and going for those Pac-12 remnants, if that's what it is. But the other thing, and I mentioned this about the ACC last week, and we'll talk about what I think are some kind of ridiculous ACC rumors running around. I think what's going to ultimately happen with the ACC will happen a lot faster with a team like Oregon or Washington, because there's a great chance that Oregon and Washington are in the 12-team playoff next year.
Yeah.
Great chance.
They're
really recruiting really well.
Yep.
Like, even though they're both going to lose their quarterbacks, you know, you've got really good head coaches. Like, there's a really good shot that that's going to be your Pac-12 champion next year, and in the 12-team playoff, and maybe even making a run to the very end. And so they can make a run to the very end, some of these teams, and they're going to wake up in the morning after they win it all. And if they're not in the SEC and the Big Ten, they're going to look at the bottom rung of those conferences and go, well, Rutgers doesn't give a crap, and they're getting twice as much money.
With all due respect, Vanderbilt, Rutgers, heck, it might even be Minnesota or Nebraska, or they're all getting the same amount from the Big Ten, and, of course, the lower level or whoever that might be in the SEC.
But if you're Oregon or Washington or, you know, long-term Clemson and FSU, like those teams that are going to be trying all the time, and I'm not saying that Rutgers isn't trying, and Vanderbilt, like they kind of are rolling out that they're trying to hit the accelerator, but that's the thing that's going to bug them is that, well, why us? And look, right now, you don't have to look at the leagues that are the SEC and the Big Ten. If you're the Pac-12, you're going to go, Georgia Tech's making more money than me? Like,
yeah, and Georgia Tech, you know what? They're not going to apologize for that.
No, they don't have to.
And that might, don't you think that is what eventually leads to Armageddon?
I do, because
it's still hard to get there because of the grant of rights, but that might eventually lead to, my God, I don't care, we have to figure this out.
Everybody's going to look for their own best interest, and why am I not hitting the most of my media dollars? And that's where it's going to lead, which I don't think is going to be good, because ultimately people are going to, I don't know, it's going to probably take your generation, my generation, and one more, like, passing through this world for people to not care anymore, because we're all going to remember, like, hey, wasn't it great when you didn't like the school that was like 90 miles away from you? And then you're like, yeah, that was great. We played them. Now we play one that's 900 miles away, and I don't really feel the same way about it.
Mr. Monkey